Ed Kemper, a name that sends shivers down the spines of those familiar with his chilling story, is a convicted serial killer whose crimes have left an indelible mark on the annals of criminal history. Born on December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California, Kemper's towering height of 6 feet 9 inches only adds to the eerie aura surrounding his notorious reputation. The signs for his brutal future were there from the beginning. As a boy, Ed Kemper killed animals, decapitated his sister's dolls, and invented disturbing games. At the age of just 15 years, he shot and killed his grandparents. After that, he went on and murdered 8 women between May 1972 and April 1973, often violating and mutilating their corpses afterward. With a troubled past and a penchant for brutality, Kemper's name has become synonymous with the darkest depths of human depravity. Welcome to Insight Wave, the channel that delves into both solved and unsolved cases from around the world. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest crime stories delivered straight to your inbox. Edmund Kemper, born on December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California, exhibited troubling behavior from an early age. His childhood was marked by turmoil as his mother, Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper, who may have had borderline personality disorder, was an alcoholic. Kemper's father, Edmund Emil Kemper II, a World War II veteran, once expressed his frustration, stating that living with Clarnell was worse than wartime suicide missions and atomic bomb testings. Clarnell frequently belittled Kemper's father for his job as an electrician and refused to show affection to her son, fearing it would influence his sexuality. In this chaotic environment, Kemper began nurturing dark fantasies, leading him to decapitate his sister's dolls. Recalling the experience, Kemper admitted to experiencing a sexual thrill, describing the sensation of removing the dolls' heads and holding them up by the hair. Furthermore, Kemper subjected his sisters to disturbing games, such as electric chair and gas chamber, where he imagined his own demise. He once even followed his second-grade teacher while carrying his father's bayonet. When his sister Susan teased him about kissing the teacher, Kemper chillingly replied that he would have to kill her first. At the age of 10, Kemper's disturbing behavior escalated into violence. After his father left the family in 1957, the young boy killed both of the family's cats, burying one of them alive and later decapitating it. As Edmund Sr. was absent, Kemper's mother directed her aggression toward her teenage son, forcing him to sleep in the basement to protect his sisters. She constantly berated and insulted him, claiming no woman would ever love him. At 14, Kemper had enough and fled his mother's house to live with his father. However, his father had remarried and sent him to live with his grandparents. It was there that Ed Kemper would embark on his path as a killer for the first time. For Ed, living on his grandparents' ranch was just as unpleasant as living at home. He later criticized his grandfather, Edmund, for being senile and his grandmother, Maud, for being emasculating. According to Kemper, his grandmother constantly belittled him and his grandfather in an attempt to assert her superiority. This led to frequent clashes between Kemper and his grandmother, causing his anger to escalate. He felt trapped and compared his situation to being in jail, eventually reaching a breaking point. On August 27, 1964, during another intense argument with his grandmother, the enraged 15-year-old took his grandfather's .22 caliber rifle and shot Maud Kemper in the head. When his grandfather approached the house, Kemper also shot him, resulting in the death of both grandparents. Kemper later confessed that he killed Maud out of curiosity, wanting to experience the act of killing his own grandmother. However, he murdered his grandfather to prevent him from discovering his wife's murder. Afterward, Kemper contacted his mother and admitted to his actions. He was then sent to the Atascadero State Hospital's criminally insane unit. During his time there, doctors diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia and noted his remarkably high IQ. Despite the severity of his crimes, Kemper's stay at the hospital was relatively short. He was released on his 21st birthday in 1969 and moved in with his mother, who was employed as an administrative assistant at the University of California in Santa Cruz. Once released, Ed Kemper wasted no time before succumbing to his murderous desires. However, initially, he made an effort to lead a seemingly normal life. Having been rejected for a job as a state trooper due to his towering height of 6 feet 9 inches and weight of 300 pounds, Kemper decided to accept a position at the Department of Transportation. While driving around California, Kemper frequently encountered hitchhiking women. This led him to offer them rides, initially intending to engage in conversations and form friendships with people his age. He managed to pick up more than 100 girls without incident. However, Kemper couldn't suppress his urge to kill. When asked about his thoughts upon seeing an attractive girl, he revealed conflicting sides of himself, one attracted and desiring companionship, while the other harboring sinister thoughts of violence. By 1972, Kemper returned to a life of violence. On May 7, he picked up 2 Fresno State students, Mary and Pesci and Anita Lucchesa, both 18 years old, near Berkeley, California. Taking them to a nearby wooded area with the intention to rape them, Kemper panicked and ended up stabbing and choking the 2 women to death. He then concealed their bodies in his car trunk and drove to his house in Alameda. Along the way, he was stopped by a police officer for a broken taillight, but the officer failed to search his vehicle, unaware of the victim's presence. At home, Kemper subjected the bodies to further atrocities, including rape and dismemberment. He placed the dismembered parts in plastic bags and disposed of them in a ravine near Loma Prieta Mountain. Continuing his spree, Kemper claimed another victim on September 14, 1972. Similar to his previous murders, he picked up a hitchhiker named Aiko Ku, a 15-year-old who had missed her bus to dance class. During the encounter, Kemper accidentally locked himself out of his car but managed to manipulate the trusting teenage girl into unlocking it for him. Subsequently, he choked her into unconsciousness, raped her, and ultimately took her life. Admiring his latest kill with sick pride, Kemper compared himself to a satisfied fisherman, appreciating his catch. Taking greater risks and seeking an extra thrill, Kemper frequented a bar known as the Jury Room, a popular spot among police officers. He formed friendships with local law enforcement, who nicknamed him Big Ed. Kemper relished being in close proximity to those attempting to apprehend him. Even though Kemper moved back in with his mother in 1973, he continued his murderous spree by targeting 3 more college students he picked up near the nearby campus. In a twisted act of psychological manipulation, he buried a severed head from one of his victims in his mother's garden, deliberately positioning it to face her bedroom. According to Kemper, he did this because his mother always craved admiration and attention from others. Indeed, Ed Kemper's primary focus had always been his mother. He stated, "My victims embodied not who my mother was, but rather her preferences, desires, and what mattered to her, and I was obliterating it." Returning to live with Clarnell immediately thrust Kemper back into his turbulent childhood. He later explained, "My mother and I resumed our horrendous battles, ones filled with violence and cruelty." The climax occurred on April 20, 1973. On that fateful night, Kemper brutally bludgeoned his slumbering mother to death using a claw hammer. Following her demise, he decapitated her and subjected her severed head to rape and an hour-long session of relentless screaming. As if his actions weren't sufficiently disturbing, Kemper also removed his mother's tongue and larynx, depositing them in the garbage disposal. However, the mechanism failed to disintegrate the tissue, causing her remains to be regurgitated into the sink. Kemper wryly remarked, "That felt fitting, given how much she complained, screamed, and berated me throughout the years." In an even more shocking turn of events, he extended an invitation to his mother's closest friend, Sally Hallett, to visit his house. Operating under a convoluted plan involving a fabricated story about a joint vacation, Kemper murdered Hallett and stole her vehicle. Subsequently, he drove to Colorado, fully expecting news reports about the two murders to surface soon. However, after an extended period of silence, Kemper eventually contacted the authorities from a telephone booth and confessed to his heinous deeds. Initially, law enforcement harbored doubts that Big Ed could be a killer. Yet, Kemper proceeded to provide specific details that only the co-ed killer would possess. When questioned about why he ceased his killing spree and turned himself in, Kemper explained, it served no tangible or genuine purpose. It was a sheer waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't endure it much longer. He further elaborated, towards the end, I began to recognize the absurdity of the entire endeavor, and in a state of near exhaustion and imminent collapse, I simply disregarded it all and terminated my actions. Kemper was apprehended and subsequently found guilty of 8 counts of premeditated murder. Despite attempting suicide twice and expressing a desire for capital punishment, he ultimately received 7 concurrent life sentences.